If you've been going around the good old internet looking for the right podcast to fulfill your New York Yankees needs, well, I'll be the first to deliver the good news to you. You have found it. Here on Yapping Yankees with me, your host, Mike Scudero, you and I will be discussing the latest news, takes, and talk throughout the entire Yankee universe. Oh, and there may be some ranting on my behalf. Yeah. Anyway, what do you say we get to it? Let's get to yapping! Well, hello there, my fellow Yankee fans, and welcome to episode 252 of the Yapping Yankees podcast. As always, I am your host, Mike Scudero, your friendly neighborhood Yankee yapper with the best yap in all the land, here on March 23rd of the year 2025 with another extra large order of the Yappuccino for you as usual. Thank you. Well, I should say the 23rd for you, because if you happen to remember, when we last yapped a couple of weeks ago, I said I'd be recording today's episode the day prior on Saturday, the 22nd, since I'm going to be out the entire day on Sunday, and that's exactly what I'm doing. It's around Saturday evening or so at the time I'm recording, but you are listening to this Sunday night or later in the week, whenever you get around to listening to it, like always. But in any event, though, my friends, I do hope you've been well since we last yapped a couple of weeks back. The season of spring is finally here. Definitely worthy of an applause. And I know we've had spring training for weeks now, but the actual season is here now, and we all know what that means. One step closer to the best damn season on the calendar, summer.
Give me a hell yeah!
Yup. Like always. But I cannot believe how time continues to fly, guys. The fact that April's a week and a half away is actually freaking bonkers. It's actually insane. But I do have some good news for you on the front of Yapping Yankees, though. I know the last few weeks have been filled with a bunch of doubt as to the next couple of months of the show amidst my extreme Series 7 studying, but I do actually have some good news for you, at least as of this next week. So you're getting this episode this weekend, obviously right now. And then next weekend, for the first time since probably December, so at least maybe 3 or so months, you will be getting Yapping Yankees episode 253 next Sunday, and it'll be the first time, once again, that you will be getting 2 Yapping Yankees episodes 2 weekends in a row.
Give me a hell yeah!
2 hell yeahs out of the gate. We love that. But yeah, so for the first time in about 3 months or so, you're going to be getting Yapping Yankees episodes back-to-back weekends. Now, I know it's always been a weekly format, especially as of the start of the regular season, and I'll try to pop as many episodes out to you for the month of April, since that is the first full month. But we know that I'm going to be going the entire month of May without an episode, given my studying leading up to my exam on May 15th. And then just a few days after that, leaving for Japan, all the way through to almost the start of June. So May just ain't gonna happen, whether I or you like it or not. So April, I'll do my best, but at least as of now, to end March, you're getting an episode today and next Sunday. It's just got to be done, because next weekend is opening weekend. It would be really, really friggin' weird to not do an episode next weekend. I do remember, I think it was last year for 2024, I actually did not do an episode opening weekend because I think opening weekend was Easter. And I always take off for Easter. So I remember that was very, very uncomfortable not doing an episode that weekend on opening weekend. I think that was last year. I'm like 99% positive that was 2024. But that's not going to be happening this year. I will be coming back with an opening weekend episode next Sunday. And I'll do my damnedest to make it weekly again for the month of April at least. I don't know what June's going to hold after May's done, but listen, all I can tell you is I'm going to do my best. Things are happening as I continue to get older here. This podcast has been going for 6 years strong now, climbing up to episode 300. I think I've done pretty okay up to this point, for lack of a better term. But for April, I'll be doing the best I can. That's really all I can say. But I cannot believe that we are getting that close. And with it being the weekend before opening weekend, you best be sure that opening day is just around the corner. It is on Thursday, the 27th, in just 4 days.
Holy crap!
Holy crap indeed, Frank Barone. Cannot friggin' believe that the offseason has gone this quick. I mean, I still do have my World Series trauma and my inner acceptance that the Dodgers are almost definitely going to win the World Series in 2025. But that doesn't mean I still can't enjoy the amazing journey and marathon that is the Major League Baseball season. And who knows, literally anything can happen. I am aware of that. And that's why I say almost definitely, because nothing is ever definite in this life, in sports or anything beyond it. So I acknowledge that there's always the slight chance at the very least of literally anything else happening. I understand that. But I still have my unfortunate belief that that is the way it's going to go down. But again, that's somehow not taking away any of my excitement at all for the fact that the regular season is back. I think that this is just one of the best times of every single year. The weather's starting to make that turn. Spring has begun officially on the calendar. And you're hoping to see some warmth in the near future, knowing that it is ahead if it has not already arrived. Baseball, at least baseball that counts, has officially returned after months without it. And it's just amongst the greatest feelings that we diehard Yankees and baseball fans in general can experience throughout the entire calendar year, guys. So that time has come yet again as we get ready to move into the final week of the month of March. And there's so much to talk about as opening day gets closer and closer. Obviously, so much has happened in Yankee land between injuries and roster speculation. Who's going to make the roster? Who's not going to make the roster? Who is already not a factor any longer that we might have considered being a factor? What's the lineup going to look like? How much trouble does the pitching continue to be in with all the injuries? There's so much discussion. And here today, my goal is to get through all the major news and updates, all the latest. Now, keep in mind that anything that's to come out tomorrow, and there probably will be a lot of news for tomorrow on Sunday, tomorrow at least as of the time I'm taping now, but because a lot of fresh news always comes out on Sundays usually, but just know that this is the latest as of Saturday since I'm recording here on Saturday evening because I'm going to be out all day tomorrow and cannot do the show. It'll still be releasing tomorrow night once I get home. I'm still going to be releasing it because as of tonight, it will already be edited. I'm just going to be releasing it tomorrow as per the usual time so that you can still listen on Sunday night or later like usual. Nothing's going to be different for you. It's just different for me on my end. I've done this a few times, recorded on Saturday, and it's all gone good. Only thing is, a lot of news usually comes out on Sundays. That's not going to make it to this episode, guys, so I'll be discussing that next Sunday when we meet again on the 30th. And I'll be able to catch up on any fresh news that hit the news waves tomorrow on Sunday the 23rd when you are probably listening. So that's the deal. But here as of Saturday night, I'll be giving you all the latest. And there is a lot of news that is pretty permanent and definitive for going forward for final roster decisions, putting an end to a lot of the speculation that was out there. And there may be a few other things out there that we maybe don't have all the details for yet that may come out tomorrow or at some point during the week. We'll hit on anything that comes out after tonight, Saturday evening. We'll hit on it next Sunday. No big deal. But so much to talk about. The lineups. Who's going to bat where? Who's making the roster and where will they bat or what role will they play if they do make the roster? So much discussion. So what do you say we get right into it? Let's not waste any time. Let's go right to Yankees news and talk about a lot of what has happened since we last spoke a couple of weeks ago. The biggest point of discussion, obviously, I think we can all predict where it was going to begin. It is going to be with Garrett Cole, because a huge topic of discussion, at least as of, I would say, towards the end of last week's, or 2 weeks ago, the last episode of Yapping Yankees. A lot of the end of that episode was dominated by the Garrett Cole news of him very likely getting Tommy John surgery, just waiting on that definitive second opinion. And I did say nobody should be holding their breath on this because it was already recommended to him. And it is very, very seldom ever changed or not followed through on given that first opinion. Usually when they are recommended to get the surgery from that first opinion, they're going to get it. And once again, unfortunately, in this case, like with all the others, that is exactly what happened here with Garrett Cole. The other opinion did say that it is recommended for him, and so he ended up getting the surgery the following day, about a week or so ago. So that's it for Cole. And I already went through my emotional comprehension / acceptance, kind of, a couple of weeks ago, so there's really no need to go on much further than that, but it was confirmed like I completely expected it to be, so it was really no surprise whatsoever to hear that he was going to get the surgery, and that is that pretty much. Now, there was something special revealed about his surgery. They said they did a certain type of operation during the surgery that actually will aid in a quicker recovery, which is always good to hear, because Tommy John surgery is enough to recover from. It's definitely difficult enough to recover from for anybody, let alone somebody of Garrett Cole's age, since he is now in his mid-30s, and the older you are, only the harder it's going to be to recover from it, at least half decently, so he can use all the help he can get, just like anybody else. But they apparently did something in his procedure that allows him to keep it to maybe around a 12-month recovery, as opposed to some guys are out as long as 15 months. So as opposed to the possibility of him missing probably even the first couple of months of 2026, let alone all of 2025, obviously, they're now saying that it's very possible that given this practice that they used in his Tommy John surgery in particular, and I certainly don't blame the Yankees for opting for this, and I hope it works out, but apparently it'll permit him to not really miss much of or really any of 2026. It's strict to about 12 months, as opposed to like 12 to 15 or 16 months like it typically is, especially for starting pitchers. But that's a good thing, I guess, so that's nice. I mean, it has no effect on 2025, so for the immediate future, doesn't really do much for you. But if you're looking ahead to 2026 at all, then that is definitely some good news. So I'm glad that they did that, and glad they were able to speed it up in that sense. So with that, I guess we'll be seeing him for all of 2026, and if he's to miss some time, I guess it'll be extremely little, even if he is a little bit delayed by the time next spring comes around. Only time will tell, but that's the latest on him. The surgery was done about a week or so ago, and that was the procedure that was done to make sure it sticks to about 12 months, speedy recovery, and that's really all there is for Cole. We're going to be seeing him just sitting and wasting away in the dugout for the entirety of 2025. And that really, really sucks, bro. Really, really blows. Really unhappy about that. So I may have had to come to terms with it a couple of weeks ago, but it doesn't make it any easier still. And we're going to be reminded of that every time the camera pans to the Yankee dugout and you see him just sitting there when he could be taking part in what will hopefully be a lot of success for the Yankees this year, despite a lot of controversy to the contrary. But that's the deal. So surgery's done, and Cole is boned for 2025, as we know. But there was actually a list released. Forgive me for not remembering by whom, but there was a list released of basically the entire Yankees injury list before the 2025 regular season even gets underway, and it is plain remarkable what has already taken place. We always say that the number one priority of spring training over anything else, besides the obvious of getting ready and getting warmed up and ramped up for the regular season and the marathon of it, the biggest priority is always get through it healthy. And to say that the Yankees failed spectacularly at this spring training is quite the understatement. Even if it's with a lot of guys that we don't particularly care about or don't even really want to get a lot of playing time for this year, it doesn't change the fact that the injury list for spring training this year, before the regular season even gets underway with games that actually freaking count, is staggering. You got Garrett Cole with Tommy John surgery. You got Chase Hampton with Tommy John surgery. And yes, the likelihood of having seen Chase Hampton, even if he were healthy in 2025, not likely at all. But still, nonetheless, doesn't matter. We're just going through the entire list, whether or not they would have been on the roster, whether or not we wanted them to even get some playing time or any at all. This is the entire list. Giancarlo Stanton, indefinite. We really have no friggin' clue with those elbows of his. So that's 3. 2 major ones. Some people may not consider Stanton a major one, at least as of the regular season, because how much time he misses every regular season as it is, but it is still a big bat to miss whether you like it or not, particularly from a power standpoint. Luis Gil, with his lat injury, down until the summertime. DJ LeMahieu, they say he's ramped up some activity, but he is still very much up in the air. There's some people saying that they don't feel like they'll see him for a while still, so it's kind of a mixed bag with that as of what could really be the truth with him. A little bit up in the air, but nonetheless, don't really care to see him get a lot of playing time, as I have made very clear for weeks and weeks and weeks now, as many of us have. But he is down. Jonathan Loáisiga still at the tail end of his injury recovery from last year, at the start of the year from his elbow surgery. He's going to be out till May or June, but he's down still. JT Brubaker, who the Yankees picked up at the deadline and never even saw after that because he was acquired injured. Now he is injured once again with his ribs, as we know, and he is shut down indefinitely. Then you have Jake Cousins, who suffered some injury troubles towards the end of last year, and now he's down with a forearm injury. Hopefully, and maybe not for too long, but he's not going to be around for opening day, so there's that. Clayton Beeter, he has his shoulder problem, and things are very up in the air for him as far as being indefinite as well, so he's down. Tyler Matzik with his oblique problem. You hope he doesn't miss too much time, because I really would like to see him pair up with Tim Hill as a really solid duo of lefties out there in the bullpen. I think it was a really good, sneaky acquisition for the Yankees this past offseason. But he's down at least for now. Scott Efros with the hamstring after throwing 1 freaking pitch in spring training. He's down. Clark Schmidt, he's working back from his, as Aaron Boone described it, quote-unquote, cranky back. And it was revealed just today, actually, that he is officially going to be starting the season on the injured list. So, I mean, he's probably only going to miss a start, so he's going to be ready to go very near the beginning, but even when he does return, he'll be on a bit of a limit because he's just a bit behind everybody. But even he's been dealing with his slow ramp-up issues and his injury problems. Ian Hamilton is starting the year on the injured list, just announced today. Literally the least surprising thing of all time, just about, next to guys like Loáisiga's injury history as far as the bullpen. I don't know, man. Ian Hamilton is always injured. Always injured. I mean, how many separate times did he go down with injury last year? What do you have, like 4 or 5? I mean, it was like every couple of weeks. And there were plenty of instances where he missed a really long amount of time. But then, not long, even after all that time missed, he would just go down with injury again. I mean, it was just constant. Now, for full context here, Ian Hamilton actually isn't missing time. I should mention this amidst my ranting about how much time he misses and everything. But he actually had an infection earlier on in spring, and they're just thinking of being precautionary with him because of the ramp-up delay that he had when he got this infection that he apparently had some time ago. But it just adds on to how much other time he's missed additionally in his time as a Yankee. He's just been out so often, whether it's for something like this or it's from an actual injury, which we saw so many times last year and even prior to that. Just he misses so much time. And I know perfectly well that this is out of his control, so I'm not trying to pile on the guy. It's just that when it comes to missing time generally, in his Yankee career so far, he has missed a lot of it, and that's just the truth, whether you like the guy or not. And I like Ian as a guy. I think he's really cool, and I think he's got good stuff. But misses a lot of time. So I hope for his sake and the Yankees' bullpen's sake that it's not too long this time around. Seems more precautionary than anything, just giving him the time that he needs to ramp up since recovering from this infection. But at least it's not an injury, but we'll see what happens going forward. But a lot of injuries, guys. Lots and lots of injuries. And this is not even mentioning Paul Goldschmidt with his back problems, but he's saying he's 100% and he's good to go. He played today for the first time in a few days, and he's going to be good for opening day. So that's good. That's why it's not really worth a mention, but even he's having his little bit of problems here. Not really a surprise given his age, but still just another name to add to the already extremely long list. So it's been brutal. Absolutely brutal for the Yankees so far here in the early going before games that count even get underway. Once again, long list. Yeah, you got Cole, Hampton, Stanton, Gil, DJ, Loáisiga, Brubaker, Cousins, Beater, Matzik, Efros, Schmidt, Hamilton, and Goldschmidt dealing some back problems. It's just almost everybody. And I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, how could you not? I mean, what other alternative is there other than just sitting there in pure dumbfounded silence? My God. You really wonder what the story is here and what they could do about it. I don't know. I don't know what you do about it. I don't know, man, but the starting rotation has gotten the crap beaten out of it, bro. The crap beaten out of it. Cole's down for the year. Heel is down until the summertime. It's a couple of your biggest arms right there. I always say, and I've been saying this for a while, and I think I even said this on the last episode a couple of weeks ago, but if I didn't, here's the first time I'm saying it here. I've said it to so many friends of mine. Can you imagine where this rotation would be if they didn't sign Max Fried? Oh my God, talk about nightmare fuel. Jesus. So, can you imagine that psychopath Carlos Rodon having to be the ace? Oh my God. It's already crazy enough, and I did say the wheels must be falling off if you're seeing this, but, and they are falling off for the starting rotation, so here we are in the reality that I said might, could happen. Now it is happening. But even Carlos Carrasco's making the roster. That's when you know things are bad. Because now with Schmidt missing probably at least a start, and probably only one start. Hopefully. But with him even being down for a start, that's 3 bigger arms now. So of that starting rotation that came into 2025 on paper, coming into spring training, 3 are now down. The only ones that remain that were a part of the 5 originally are Fried and Rodon. That's it. So now the Yankees are having to call on Marcus Stroman, Carlos Carrasco. It's getting interesting. It's getting real interesting. And I'm not really sure Will Warren is going to have that much of a role. It's actually one of the things that they've been pretty silent about, not really giving much details on their plans for that. I think he would have a much bigger role if Schmidt were expected to actually miss some time, but he's expected to be completely fine by his first or second start. So, I mean, it's really not a big deal there. So since he's probably going to be ready to go, for the most part, maybe except for one start, I think you really only have to worry about replacing Cole and Heel. So that's where Stroman and Carrasco come in, I guess. And then plus there's a whole controversy about years of control and service time manipulation and all that crap with Will Warren, so they might be trying to be a little careful with that. And having Carrasco make the roster also guarantees he would not opt out, since he had the option to do that by the end of spring training with his minor league deal that he was originally signed to, which is why I was saying you're probably not going to see him unless the wheels are falling off of the rotation, and they are. So turns out he did actually make the team, didn't opt out. Today actually would have been the date that he could have opted out. The 22nd, at least as of the time I'm taping. But today would have been the day, and since they announced that he is making the roster, not surprisingly so, especially considering the state of the starting rotation, wanting to hold on to him for depth, and then, of course, the whole Will Warren reasoning on their behalf, which I don't care about, but they do. The service time manipulation and years of control, all that BS. We've spoken about all that crap with countless other guys, so no need to go on with any of that anymore, because it's exhausting and a bunch of baseball corporate crap, but nonetheless. So that's why guys like Carrasco have made the roster, and they got to fall back to him and Stroman because the rotation just fell apart before our very eyes. And you hope that Schmidt only misses one start, maybe, at the most. But, my God, it's bad. It's really, really bad. With the rotation, at least. But, yeah, back to my original point. Can you imagine if they didn't get Max Fried? They would be in such a rough spot right now. It's actually unbelievable. It is a good thing that they do get these minor league deals, even if you're not particularly thrilled about it, given the circumstances that they're in. But it's a good thing they make these minor league signings like Carrasco and many others just for depth. I mean, because most of the time you do need it. And that's what I and all others always usually say whenever there's competition for a position usually. A lot of the time it takes care of itself, and usually it's in the form of an injury, and usually in the form of one that we do not like very much. So, and I don't like injuries to anybody. I don't want anybody to get hurt. But there are obviously guys we want out there more so than certain others. So that's what I mean by that. But the rotation, man, they are in some freaking conundrum they've created for themselves with these injuries, man. But even outside of that, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But on Thursday the 13th, as we move forward with the news here, just a little bit more injury news. When it comes to Giancarlo Stanton specifically, I did say that he's pretty indefinite and very much up in the air. There was some optimism on this day. They were saying that we could possibly see him by Memorial Day. I'd be surprised if that were the truth, because not only now apparently is he dealing with the elbow issues as we've known for weeks now, but apparently as of the 13th, on that day, it was revealed that he's also dealing with some chronic calf issues. So the chronic lower body issues continue. John Heyman had originally made that report, and it's just piling up for Stanton at this point. There's really nothing else to say about him at this point. I mean, the main thing all of us have been saying for a while now, me for years, is that the biggest priority when it comes to Stanton is that he's ready for October. That's the biggest thing. But you also do want to see him get some freaking regular season reps in. I mean, he just misses so much time, bruv. So much time. So, it sounds like he's not going to be back anytime soon. It's probably not going to be until around the summertime. I'd be surprised if it's around Memorial Day. But we'll see what the deal is with him when it comes to that. Then on the 14th, the following day, despite Max Fried being the best pitcher in the rotation right now, it was revealed that Carlos Rodon would actually be getting the start on opening day. So definitely an interesting choice there by the Yankees, but we'll see how it turns out. He's probably the next best pitcher in the rotation without Heel or Cole around, so we'll see. He's getting the start on opening day. Congratulations to him. I would say I'm sure he's very happy about that, but when he was asked about it, he was actually just basically on robot settings when it comes to that, basically just saying, oh, it's another day, as if getting the nod to start opening freaking day for the New York Yankees is like going to get the milk. But listen, we all know how I feel about Carlos Rodon more often than not. I have made it no secret. I am not the guy's biggest fan, to put it very mildly. But he's still on the team. Hopefully he has a good opening day start, but we'll see. Then a couple of days after that, on the 16th, last week, there's some more news on Clark Schmidt. Didn't really change too much as far as his trajectory. At most, hopefully, just missing a start, if that. But they said that on top of his quote-unquote cranky back, as Boone said, that I can't say that enough because I think it's just one of the funniest expressions ever said by anybody. But it's literally the biggest Booneism I've heard, and that's saying a lot. He's had a lot of similar expressions when describing other injuries, but my God, is it just another classic to add to the bunch. But they said that on top of the back problems, he was experiencing some shoulder soreness, which is just about the very last thing you want to hear about a pitcher experiencing, unless it's Tommy John surgery with the elbow. So that's just about the next worst thing you could hear about a pitcher experiencing. So my heart dropped to my left big toe upon reading that, but apparently it's not that big of a concern because he's still on track to just be starting a little late, but not really missing any significant time at all. I guess time will tell, right? Anyways, yesterday, on the 21st, we jump all the way there. Not too much news otherwise, other than that, because all the other news is really surrounding guys just being sent down to minor league camp, being sent back down to AAA or what have you. Just a lot of roster shifting going down in that sense. But other than those moves being made, you jump to Friday the 21st, and it was announced that Dom Smith had actually exercised his opt-out for his minor league deal, very similarly to the opt-out option that Carrasco had on his. I assume this means Dom Smith was told that he was not going to be making the roster, so understandably so. He chose to opt out, so the Yankees no longer have him. So this basically signaled that they are pretty much full on in on Ben Rice being the DH, or maybe even just shifting around the DH spot. We know that Boone likes to put Judge there sometimes. Maybe if somebody else other than Oswaldo is playing third, maybe somebody else will DH, or Waldo DH one day, or maybe they'll give Chisholm a DH day, or Goldschmidt a DH day and put Bellinger over there first or Ben Rice over at first. And, we all know how Boone likes to shift crap around. There are millions of different scenarios. I don't have to map out every single one of them. We'll probably see every single one of them at one point or another, especially to start the year. But regardless of what scenario we're talking about, Dom Smith will no longer be a part of it. That's the point. So, I think it's a shame to see him go. If you follow me on social media, you would know that about a week ago I put out a mock opening day lineup of something that I would have liked to have seen, and Dom Smith was a part of that. I was very much intrigued by the good spring he had had, and I know that a lot of people were quick to mention, what are you, crazy? It's easily Ben over him. Look at their spring training comparisons and all that, and when it came to that, I didn't really like how people so easily dismissed Dom Smith. Now, I get the argument that Smith has been around for a long time. He's been around for 8 years in the major leagues. And for the vast majority of those 8 years, he didn't do too many special things. And I'm aware of that. But the fact of the matter is he did have good moments. And if you were strictly comparing spring training numbers, Dom Smith wasn't all that far off at all off of Ben Rice. And in some regards, he was better. Up until the point that he opted out yesterday. So, I mean, if you want to make the argument that, oh, Ben is younger, I actually see him being a part of the Yankees organization going forward, and he deserves more at-bats to continue to get more experience with the major leagues, that I'm completely down with. I completely agree with that logic. But just with the people that were strictly comparing their spring training numbers and performances and almost scoffing at the idea of even remotely considering Dom Smith for a roster spot, I thought that was a bit silly. Dom has definitely, or at least had done, past tense since he's no longer with the team, but I think he had done plenty to at least get some considerations for making the roster. 297 average, 568 slugging, 857 OPS, 3 home runs and 12 RBIs, and that was at the end of play a few days ago. And it's not like he's really old either. I mean, he looks older than he really is, I do have to say that, but he is only still just 29 years old. I don't know. So I actually had included him in my original mock lineup. My mock lineup, and I'll give my modified one with the most recent changes, but my mock lineup from before was Wells, Judge, Bellinger, Goldschmidt, Dominguez, Jazz, Volpe, Smith, and Peraza. That was my mock opening day original lineup from about a week ago before any of this other news about any other roster decisions came out that have come out lately in the last, couple of days or so. But yeah, I thought it was weird that people scoffed at the idea simply because of his past, or just saying that, oh, Ben Rice is so much better in spring training than he is. And listen, Ben is having a fantastic spring training, and I couldn't be happier to see it. He's also, by the way, gotten much bigger. He's got a lot more size, which I definitely think has played a part in his increase in power. I mean, he's definitely gotten a lot more power, even more so than he already had. But I feel like he's gotten much bigger as well. Not taken away from Ben Rice at all when I'm floating the idea of Dom Smith. Not at all. But Ben also did, and yes, this was with less experience, and this only gets fixed with more experience. I get all of that. You don't have to explain all that crap to me. But Ben did have a tendency of going on these tears for a little while, and then he fell off just about as hard as anybody could fall off. I thought that it was just worth exploring given the spring that he's had, and also the fact that he has a lot more major league experience. I thought at least to start the year, you wouldn't have to really stick with him, and you could have a short leash with it, but at least to start the year, I thought at least entertaining Dom Smith was a pretty solid option. I would have been willing to put him in the lineup for a while. And a couple of people that I said that to, and other people said Ben Rice, but understanding my reasoning for being at least curious about Dom Smith. But a couple of people really just scoffed at it. I didn't get that. For the reasons that I said before. But I'm not beyond heartbroken by Dom Smith leaving, of course. I don't care all that much. I was just interested to see if he could have made the roster and the impact that he could have had with the Yankees if he did so, because he could have DH'd, he could have played first, he even has some experience in the outfield. So, like Ben Rice a bit, being a potential backup catcher and also being able to play first, he's a bit versatile himself. So I thought it could have been a little interesting. But he must have been told he wasn't making it because he opted out. Not heartbroken over it. Just a little upset because I would have liked to see what he did, but I am perfectly fine with the Yankees going all in on Ben Rice, and I'd like to see what further improvements he could make on top of the improvements we've already seen this spring. How much bigger he's gotten in size, definitely got a little bit more size to him. and seeing the results of all that for when the games actually count. So we'll see what goes on. And I'm sure Boone's going to be shifting people around so everybody gets their field time and maybe even some DHing time and their days off. All the load management crap that we all just love so much, right? So we'll see. But this basically signified to me that when it came to him versus Ben Rice, they're basically all in on Ben Rice. Otherwise, for the remainder of Yankees news, I guess we'll just refer to the other pieces of news they've just given out within the last 24 hours or so, just a bunch of things. And we're just still waiting on to see what the Yankees do with Will Warren. I guess it depends on their official move with Clark Schmidt going forward. But again, even if Will Warren were to come up, he probably wouldn't last too long because then they would reactivate Schmidt very shortly after the season began. But Carlos Carrasco is basically certain to be in the rotation, just so they could hold on to him and sign him to a major league contract, at least including him on the team so they didn't lose him to an opt-out. So there was a lot of controversy about that a couple of days ago amongst the Yankee fans. A lot of people didn't like the idea of Carrasco getting time over Will Warren, who actually showed a lot more potential this spring after being a disaster last year and not really amounting to much to his development before this spring, just about. But the steps forward that he has taken has encouraged a lot of people, and I do hope that he continues to get chances in the future, but as of right now, it's just a little bit up in the air, and I don't think they've made a definitive decision on this as of right now, but we'll see what goes on. Like I said earlier on in the show, it did depend majorly on what they do with Schmidt, and they did announce basically just today that Schmidt would be starting the year on the injured list, but still not much on Will Warren, so very interesting. We'll see what happens on that front. Paul Goldschmidt again saying that he's basically 100% with his back problem, so no worry there, at least as of right now. They did announce that Cody Bellinger will be the Yankees' number 3 hitter, so there's some controversy about that, because some people do know how Aaron Judge's RBI spiked being in the 3-hole last year and how much he always preferred to hit in the 3-hole and how much he liked it there. And that's all valid, and in that sense, I'm a little surprised to see them make this move. But also, when he was batting third, and I understand this too, it helped to have Juan freaking Soto ahead of him. That's no longer the case. And as much as I am beyond excited, exhilarated over Cody Bellinger, thinking he's going to have a great year, and I still think he's a fantastic hitter, the fact of the matter remains is he's not Juan Soto. Almost nobody in the game is. Maybe only a couple of others are, and that's it. Judge one of them. Objectively much more so than Soto, obviously. But nonetheless, I'm fine with this because the Yankees don't have Soto anymore. Judge did still do very well in the 2-hole when he hit there. Obviously, that's where he achieved his greatness in 2022 as well, with his 62-homer season. Might not get the chance to drive in as many RBIs as he did in 2024 because obviously having Soto ahead of him and being in the 3-hole presented even more of RBI opportunities for him, resulting in him finishing in the mid-140s. So that might change that a little bit. But otherwise, it's not like it's a massive change. It's one lineup slot, so it's not the end of the world, really, in my opinion. It is a change, and it's worth talking about, but it's not the end of the world. He still has a good supporting cast behind him in Bellinger and whoever else they're planning on hitting behind Bellinger. I'm guessing it's going to be Goldschmidt, but they could be shifting that around too, depending on the day. We'll see. But regardless, that's their choice. Bellinger will be hitting third, which I'm okay with. I'm very interested to see how that goes. As far as the rest of the lineup's concerned, we know that they're basically going in on Ben Rice, so I would expect to see him as at least a DH every once in a while, most of the time probably, but they'll probably do their shifting around as we've said. Elsewhere in the lineup, we know that the third base job at this point, not surprisingly so, despite my interest being in Peraza, but even though I wanted to see him get one last shot, nope, he could possibly still be around, but I don't really know how they plan on managing it. But we do know that this was his last shot, so if they don't add him to the roster, they're going to have to let him go and risk losing him because he doesn't have any options left. But not surprisingly so, the third base job is probably Oswaldo's. But something that was interesting was that Max T. Goodman on Twitter, who I very much like, we have followed each other for some time now. We've had some good interactions on the timeline. He's a great reporter for the Yankees. Max had tweeted earlier today saying that it actually seemed to him that Pablo Reyes, who we've seen a great deal of in spring training, he's done very well for himself, actually said that he's higher up on the Yankees depth chart right now than Oswald Peraza. They're just not locked into Peraza, man. I mean, whether it be because he just got hurt too much or the fact of how much they screwed around with him in years past, and I don't know. He ended up falling off in spring training, which isn't too much of a surprise. It's unfortunate, and, he had full control over it this time. He had his shot. So if he doesn't get it, it's sad. I'm not going to be happy about it because I had a lot of thoughts in my mind for this kid, for the future, for his career in the major leagues potentially, but it doesn't look like that's going to play out. I don't know, man. So if even Pablo Reyes is higher on their chart for depth than Peraza, it's not really a good sign, but that was more or less something that Max T. Goodman said it seems like within the Yankees organization right now. So that's that. But basically just a lot of news on what the roster's forming out to be and what the lineup could end up being. Carrasco making the roster after they moved Garrett Cole to the 60-day injured list officially. Just a lot of that stuff, a lot of transactional things. And I'm sure that'll continue going through the final couple of days of spring training within the next couple of days, right up until opening day. But that's pretty much all it is for news, except for one other small thing. And by small, doesn't mean it's not awesome, because it absolutely is awesome. But there is something else that happened very recently, just today as a matter of fact. Not too long ago at all from the time I started recording. And it's in addition to the transactional stuff, and it is a part of it, but the context of it makes it much nicer and worth diving into. On top of all the other pieces of controversy and discussion that's been taking place in the Yankee community, who should win what position, who should be batting leadoff, whatever the discussion may be, who should make the roster on the rotation, there is one other matter that I have not mentioned yet, and there's a reason for that. Backup catcher is another matter that we've talked about for a couple of weeks, and there are some people with some very strong opinions on it. Before there was more official DH discussion, people were saying that Ben Rice should be the backup catcher, and who knows, maybe we'll get to see him have some reps back there on top of his DHing and whatnot. Depends on what Aaron Boone decides to do day by day, and we all know that he loves to shift crap around. But the one thing that I had not mentioned was backup catcher for this reason. And we all know that as of the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, for the last episode or two of Yapping Yankees in that time, since in the last 3 weeks I've only done one episode since the one 2 weeks ago, but for the last 3 weeks, give or take, very shortly after spring training began, since then, there has been one guy that I've made it clear I was rooting for to win the backup catching job. And there are a couple other guys going for it, like Ben Rice could have been one of them, and he might still get reps back there. There's Alex Jackson. And then there's this guy primarily, who I was rooting for. J.C. Escarra. From about a week or so into spring training, maybe even a tiny bit less, just a couple of days even maybe, I just liked what I saw from this kid. Behind the plate and especially at the plate. Got such a sweet swing, showing some real true potential, and he's a great story. For those who don't know a lot about J.C. Escarra, I didn't really give this background of him from when I've been talking about him for a few weeks now. But for those who don't know, he's one of those stories of a guy who had just regular jobs, regular guy like the rest of us, or the vast majority of us at the very least, and just happened to be taking the shot of a lifetime at what's considered a very lofty dream, but a remarkable one if you were to achieve it. And that is making it to the big leagues as a professional baseball player. He was an Uber driver and a substitute teacher. And as of today, he was taken and called into Aaron Boone's office, and Boone sat him down and told him that he has made it to the big leagues. Absolutely an applause for this young man. What a story, man. And as I said before, he was called into Boone's office. I actually have the clip that the Yankees posted on Twitter maybe like a half an hour ago from the time I'm recording. It really just happened. Like right around the time I started, give or take. I don't know. It was just, I saw this, and it's really a touching clip. I know that since this is a podcast, you're not going to be able to see it, but obviously you'll still be able to hear it on the clip here. I'm going to play it for you in a second. But this is J.C. Escarra, backup catcher candidate throughout all of 2025 spring training, officially being told by Aaron Boone just a little bit ago that he is actually going to be headed to New York this week with the rest of the big league squad. This clip is obviously brought to you by the Yankees. Take a listen.
This is difficult to have to do because I know you put yourself in a really good position and you've done everything you could have expected. I mean, you've gotten better as a catcher, you rake, and you came in here and showed it. But as you know, we have a lot of catching depth, as you know, so that's what makes this hard. You're going to big leagues, bro.
Let's go.
Congratulations.
The major leagues.
You earned it.
I appreciate it, my brother. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, what a journey. And
wow.
It's just getting started now again, right?
It's real.
Now we got real things to go chase, right?
Yep. Chase that ring.
And you've earned that right.
Thank you.
With a lot of good people in that room that you've earned the right to be here and be that guy. And I can't wait to go see you start carving out your big league career and help us win, baby.
Let's go, my brother.
Congrats.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep.
Let's go, baby.
Woo! Proud of you.
Wow.
Proud of you.
I'm sweating right now.
Huh?
I'm sweating right now. Let's go. Taking everything up there. See you in the Bronx.
This is where the fun begins.
For Escarra, absolutely Anakin Skywalker. That is such an awesome clip. And I do love, as much as it's no secret that I am not a fan of Aaron Boone's, but as much of a hard time as I give him, I gotta say, I gotta give props to him for this habit that he has. This is not the first time he's done this by a long shot, but he's done this with a number of other guys, but I gotta give him credit for this awesome habit he has of calling guys into the office and framing the start of the conversation as if he's about to tell them they didn't make the roster. We know a lot of guys have the misfortune of having to actually be told that and not having it be actually bad news like this when it actually turns out to be good news. Some guys are actually delivered the bad news that they didn't make it. But he happens to, especially in cases like this where he has good news to tell them as opposed to bad news, he frames it at the beginning like it is bad news, like he's about to tell them that they didn't make it. And I think it always makes for an awesome reaction. Even better than the one that already would be there naturally at being told you made the freaking New York Yankees big league roster at the end of spring training. But, oh my gosh, it makes it even better. And this clip is so I don't know. I just love listening to things like this. And good for JC, man. He worked his ass off. He had himself a great spring. He's 30 years old as of this year, born in 1995. And he's just getting his major league career off the ground, as you heard Boone say there. And he earned his shot. I think it's freaking awesome. This is the guy who I've been wanting to be the Yankees' backup catcher to at least start the year, since just a couple of days into spring training, getting a look at him. I am very, very curious and excited to see what this guy's able to pull off once the season begins. So, the most heartfelt of congratulations to J.C. Escarra, fully deserved, and what a wonderful story, honestly. I love stories like this. Bro was an Uber driver and a substitute teacher. And now, after a kick-ass spring, he's getting the opportunity to be the New York Yankees backup catcher. That is unbelievable. And they even released a clip shortly after this. I'm not going to play that one for you, but you can go listen to that on social media yourself if you want. But they released a clip also of him telling his mom, and they're speaking Spanish in the clip, but they have English subtitles at the bottom. But he called his mom up and told her in real time that he's going to be headed to New York this week with the rest of the big league roster, and it was so touching, honestly. The mom went insane. You heard her crying, and JC was crying on his end, and it was something, man. It's great to get to see some of these guys living out a childhood dream, especially when They were what you could very well consider to be ordinary, like most of the rest of us. Again, an Uber driver and a substitute teacher in this guy's case, and now he's headed to New York as the New York Yankees backup catchers start the 2025 season. Just awesome stuff. It's awesome. It's as great as it gets. So I'm so happy for him. Very curious to see what he does. But that was some awesome news coming out of the Yankees for today, outside of just the transactional stuff. But outside of that, guys, the rest of the show I wanted to spend on both a very condensed version of the social media segment because, I mean, I released it in sort of a weird way today, and plus I'm recording not too long after I had put it out, and not many people have gotten a chance to reply to it, let alone even see it. So I only have a few replies, if that, to be honest. Not much feedback on that because of all the weirdness with this particular episode, having to record the day before and not giving people much time to reply to it, and I don't know, it's weird. So that's going to be very condensed and much shorter than the usual social media segment, but it's also like a bit of a longer to answer question, much more detailed. But in any event, before we even get to that, I also wanted to discuss basically the last couple of weeks of spring training and some big talking points on top of certain things that I might have already mentioned throughout Yankees news at times, depending on what the topic of discussion was throughout it. But also, when it comes to the regular season starting in a few days, just before we get to that, I wanted to save this report for this episode. This came out weeks ago, this report. I guess this will be the official end to Yankees news for today. But I saved it for today's episode, the episode right before opening day, since it mostly has to do with what we will be hearing in Yankee Stadium throughout the regular season. We've also heard them experimenting with this at GMS at times when the games have happened to have been on television. They usually are most of the time when they're at GMS, but this is mainly for Yankee Stadium for when the regular season really starts. Let's be honest here. So I saved it for this episode, the episode right before opening day, because it is news that, although it's small or just completely inconsequential and insignificant to other people, I think it's a good change that we're finally seeing here from a lot of us who have begged for this for years now. But it turns out that when the regular season actually begins, with it dead ahead, it's an appropriate time to report this, that the Yankees will no longer be playing the New York, New York theme from Frank Sinatra in Yankee Stadium after losses, and they will instead be playing That's Life by Frank Sinatra, which is so much better, or just a variety of other songs that they're still classics but have sort of a sadder feel to it because the Yankees lost the freaking game. We shouldn't be hearing Start Spreading the News and a happy thing after the Yankees lose at home. So we've all been saying this for a very long time. A lot of us Yankee fans have said it, and the Yankees are finally taking action and doing something about it and realizing that playing New York, New York after a loss at Yankee Stadium is just plain wrong. So it's awesome to see them finally doing something about it and changing it up. All of us were so sick of hearing that friggin' song after a loss.
Quiet!
Yeah, for real, honestly. So, thrilled about that change, and I thought that very appropriate to report just before the regular season begins in just a couple of days, or a few days rather. But that's the deal with Yankee Stadium, so no longer will you be hearing New York, New York, awkwardly so, after a loss at Yankee Stadium. So a welcomed change to the stadium. Smaller change for some, but a bigger deal for others. I think it's a pretty big deal, and I think it's a very good change for the stadium. But that's the deal, so expect that change as well come the regular season. That's pretty much all for news, though, guys. But again, before that, just wanted to do a real spring training wrap-up. I'm not really going to mention spring training come next week, obviously, because no one's going to give a rat's anus about that once the regular season's actually underway. But since spring training is coming to an end just within the next couple of days, Tuesday is the final game when the Yankees take on the Marlins at Lone Depot Park to end things for spring training, and then we jump to Thursday after everybody has Wednesday off. So, with things coming to an end, I just basically want to do an overall recap, at least here as of Saturday night. Everything that's happened with a lot of the big players that are a part of a lot of the roster competition and points of controversy going on here throughout spring training. But I'll start with Austin Wells. Leading off, I guess it's appropriate starting with him since he has made a name for himself in this leadoff spot throughout spring training. But he continues to just be really freaking good in that leadoff spot. And that's why, as you'll hear shortly in the social media segment, I've decided to do what I do with him in the lineup personally, at least to start the year. But he is just terrific there. In the game against Detroit, just yesterday, he had 2 more home runs in that leadoff spot. Home runs numbers 4 and 5. And he has 10 RBIs and a batting average over 350 this spring. He has been killing it in the leadoff spot. And just in general, just a really good spring for him after what was a very, very bad postseason for him. And last month or so of the regular season even. He had just a last couple of months on the calendar last year in 2024. Just as brutal as it gets, particularly at the plate for Austin Wells. So it's nice to see him bounce back here, despite it just being exhibition. But still, nice to see any sort of a comeback at all. I mean, come on. Ben Rice has been awesome, like I just got done saying before. He's batting in the higher 200s, went 2 for 4 in his most recent game against that same Tigers team in that game yesterday, alongside Austin Wells, batting right after him, actually, as a matter of fact. But he's done a great job, too, and he's definitely earned his spot. 5 home runs, 9 RBIs himself. OPS just south of 1,000. So nice to see that. Pablo Reyes, we were just mentioning him just before. He's definitely in on the mix in the Yankees' depth. And he's had himself a very nice spring, as I mentioned, as of yesterday on Friday. He was batting .297 even after going 0 for 3 with an OPS in about the mid-800s. Even Trent Grisham has had himself a very nice spring. He's golfing the friggin' ball out of the park a lot. He lost some weight from last year. He's looking very similarly to how he did when he was on the Padres, bodily-wise, and still rocking the mustache and everything, and he's doing a very good job. My brother loves him to death. I've mentioned that a few times on the show in the past, because Trent absolutely took it to the Mets, who he hates, in the 2022 postseason, so he just fell in love with him from there, and then he got to be a Yankee alongside Juan Soto last offseason, and he's still here, obviously. So my brother's very happy about that. So Trent has himself 4 home runs this spring as well, just golfing it out himself, and because of that, his OPS is well above 1,000. So that's an interesting point there. He'll definitely be either riding the bench, or maybe he'll get some DH appearances despite having a very good glove. We'll see. Oswaldo, doing himself a very nice job, of course, too. He's been moving around this spring, not even only just playing third base, of course, because he is very versatile. We know that about him, being a super utility guy first before anything else, but probably being the starting third baseman to at least start the year. But he's, as of yesterday, even after going 0 for 4, batting .283, having himself a nice spring as well. J.C. Escar, the guy I was just talking about before, who won the backup catching job, he's had himself a very nice spring as well. That clip before that I played with him and Aaron Boone, that was actually just after today's game, obviously, because he actually got the start in today's game. He went 1 for 3, and he is batting .333 in spring after that with an OPS over 900. So, again, that would lead to their decision. That's awesome. Even amidst all of the other depth they have that even Boone mentioned in that clip. You got Ben Rice there. You got Alex Jackson there. Ronaldo Hernandez, who came in the game today after Escar. They have some decent catching depth. Decent amount of it at the very least, even if the quality isn't quite there, because, backup catchers also only going to be so good. But Escar has definitely led the pack this spring, so he still has earned that. Very nice job by him. Goldschmidt has had himself a very nice spring, even after going 0 for 2 today, despite getting an RBI. He batted .294 at least as of today. Still a few days left, so all of these numbers will change at least a little bit in the next couple of days for their final spring numbers. But .294 average, OPS over 1,000. 3 bombs and 11 RBIs. Definitely got a hold of a few really nicely. And even just missed a home run in the earlier part of today's game to dead center field. Just missed it. Hit it a little bit too high. Not far enough. But nonetheless, very nice spring by him, which I'm very happy to see. Cody Bellinger has just gone insane. Definitely the best spring of anybody, I think it's safe to say, at least on the Yankees. Looking good out in the field, playing left and center throughout at different times, and even after going 0 for 4 today, .426 average, which with an OPS floating around 1,200. So he has looked fantastic. Aaron Judge, the captain, he has done little to nothing this spring. He DH'd today, which we all know, as I said earlier in the show, Boone likes to do at times, and you'll probably see that shifted in every once in a while in the regular season as well, but finally for the first time this spring got to see this happen today. It's about damn time.
Drilled left field. There it goes. See ya. Oh, what a shot by Judge. A 2-run blast. It's 3-0 Yanks.
Clipping courtesy of the Yes Network. Did you hear that? Oh, God. Let me tell you something. I don't care how crappy the guy is doing, especially when it comes to the beautiful echo off the bat that's created being in a spring training park generally. God, when he gets a hold of one, oh, good Lord. Duck and covered, friggin' piss rocket. Ugh. So he's done little to nothing at all this spring, at least at the plate, but that was nice to see for the first time this spring today. So that happened earlier. Anthony Volpe, we know that he's not my favorite person since he decided to regress in 2024. Had himself a nice October. I always am sure to mention that. I give credit where credit is due. But even though these are exhibition games, and the shortstop job is definitely, obviously his, at least the starting job. Can't play every single game, but his durability is good, but we all know that obviously I'm expecting more of him lately, and I'm hoping to get that. But that's why I haven't been happy with his performance this spring. He's gotten a hold of a couple of balls really nicely, but overall, even after having a hit today, this spring he's batting .208. He does have 3 homers and 8 RBIs. He's gotten a hold of a couple, like I mentioned, but the OPS is still low, under 700, which is crap. And even if I look at some of the other numbers to try to get more of a picture painted of it, like on-base percentage, which means a great deal to me, especially with someone of his speed, what he could mean on the bases. 269 on base. So, at least as of this spring, Volpe is not on a good track to show me that he is capable of what a lot of us feel he could be capable of, but just refuses to show outside of just the first month of last season. So, this is year 3. We all know my takes on him and what I would finally like to see from him, but I don't really know when or if we will actually see it. We'll have to wait and see. But did have a hit in today's game. We'll see what happens. Jazz has also not done the best job this spring, batting .205 with a 755 OPS. But most of that OPS is thanks to the fact that he himself has also gotten a hold of a couple very nicely. 3 home runs and 11 RBIs, so he has driven them in. But also with him, if I'm looking at his on-base percentage, for instance, and that's also a very important presence on the bases, considering he is also very fast. But look at his on-base, and that's also just 300. So that could be better. It's better than Volpe's, but it could still be better. So Jazz has a lot more experience, though, and I'm sure that he's going to make up for it with his defense. Volpe's a good defender as well, but he does make his dumb mistakes out there, and we know that he is capable of more with hitting, especially with how much they talked about him for years, and I know not every prospect pans out, but I usually give at least 3 full seasons, which is why I'm not saying throw the towel in on him yet. Some people already have, and that's fine. That's their choice. I'm willing to give him all of 2025, and he better not friggin' disappoint me, or there would be hell to pay. And by hell, I mean absolutely nothing will happen. Anyway, up next we have Jason Dominguez, and he's done very nicely. He was starting off a bit slow towards the start or the middle-ish of spring training around that time, but the last couple of weeks he's really heated up. Even today he went 1 for 3 as well, and he had an RBI ground out in the second inning. Then he had an RBI single in the 4th, so he drove in a couple, got himself a hit, batting .281, an OPS floating around 800, so that's plenty fine. 3 home runs, 11 RBIs. Can't really complain about that. Those are good numbers, and we know that Jason is also one of the huge wild cards that I am very excited to see hopefully get a full season under his belt for the first time. His on-base percentage could be a little bit better. It's not much higher than his average, which tells you he's not really taking his walks, which is not great. I mean, in 57 at-bats, he only has 2 walks, so I could see the walk numbers get a little bit better for him so he gets on base more often, but I like the power that he flashes. I like that he puts bat to ball a lot of the time. We'll see what continues to happen with him, but I am very excited about him to see what progress he can make in left field and obviously what he does at the plate. He could be A huge factor with this team, man. Huge factor. So those are a lot of the big talking points for the team. Big wrap-up of where a lot of guys are at this point in time with spring training about to end and the regular season on the cusp of beginning. But I am extremely excited. Probably the two guys who I'm most excited to see how they do in 2025, whether they be external or internal additions or comebacks from last year or whatnot. Two guys on this entire team I'm probably most excited for, if I had to say. It's probably Cody Bellinger at number one, because I've always been a huge fan of Cody's, and I think when he is really on the money, then he is just great. And I really think he's going to fit very well with the Yankees. I've talked about it many times in the last couple episodes. He's the one I'm most excited for. And the next I'm most excited for is probably Jason Dominguez. Very, very just enthralled in what he is going to do. I could not be more interested if I tried. I'm also very excited to see Max Fried actually pitch in the regular season for the Yankees and see what he means to this rotation, especially one that is hurting the way the Yankees rotation is, so I'm very excited for him. I'm also thrilled to have Devin Williams being the closer at the back end of the bullpen. I think he, Weaver, and when he's ready to go, Loaisiga, will be a vicious three-headed monster at the back end there. My three-headed monster that I remember is about 10 years ago with Betances Miller Chapman. It's one of the most famous three-headed bullpen monsters in recent history for not only the Yankees, but in Major League Baseball. When you got to them, the game was more or less over. But I think something very similar could be created once Loaisiga is ready to go with these three, with him, Weaver, and Williams. I think it's got extreme potential. Extreme potential. If they give him a shot, I don't really know if they officially will. It's starting to look like not. But if they give him a shot, I'm very curious to see what kind of a role Oswald Peraza could have. I've mentioned it before. I mean, he was also a part of my mock lineup, even though I was acknowledging that Waldo realistically is probably going to get the third base starting job, and that's is basically going to happen. But if they give him a shot, and even if not, just in the next few days when they make an official decision on him, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens with him. Definitely got my eyes on him. As far as guys that I am keeping an eye on out of partial frustration / concern to see if they could take that next step or maybe undo a wrong that they've had, or just maybe I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I'm curious to see if they could get in my better graces. Definitely the top two I think of are Anthony Volpe. That's number one. I need to see some steps forward with him this year, and my eyes will be on him from jump, right at opening day. And with any luck, he will have the first month of this year the way he did last year, playing out of his freaking mind. The best of Anthony Volpe that we have ever seen and could possibly ever see going forward. I hope not. Hope we get to see that Volpe again, because we know that since he did it, he is capable of that, but we just have questions as to his abilities to adjust. Because obviously something changes, whether it be his own mechanics or maybe players on other teams are making their own adjustments and he just can't adjust back. But I am going to be looking at Anthony Volpe very strongly this year, since it is year 3. And 3 full years, maybe even a little bit of a fourth, is usually what I give guys to see what they really are in my mind. And at that point, I usually draw the conclusion that's probably what they are at that point, more or less. But I will be keeping a very strong eye on him, hoping to see some significant strides forward, particularly at the plate, because although he occasionally makes dumb mistakes in the field, he's still a very solid fielder. That's not primarily what I'm looking at. I just have to see leaps forward offensively, even with a good October. When it comes to the regular season, and just permanently going forward, obviously you're going to go through your periods of slumps, everybody does, duh, but I need to see some significant steps forward to the Volpe that we all know he could be and also hope he could be. Gonna need to see that. And although most of the season was actually really solid for him last year, except for that just horrendous, unspeakably horrible 1 month or so stretch in the middle of the year last year, my eyes are also going to be on Rodon. Because we saw that in the playoffs at times, he just fell apart because he couldn't control himself emotionally, got himself way too hyped up or exhausted too soon. Sometimes he just absolutely implodes. He is his own worst enemy the vast majority of the time. And especially right now, where the rotation deeply needs him, possibly more so than ever, my eyes are going to be on him to control himself, to ground himself, and to be the Rodon that we have seen many times in the past, one that can be an ace of the staff if he puts his mind to it. We know he has that potential, although he's a huge wild card. We know that he has the potential. We've seen it before, even if it was before he came to the Yankees. I'm going to be keeping an eye on him, that he carries his weight, hoping that he does, in this rotation in a time of dire need. They don't have Garrett Cole this entire year. Others have to step up. And Rodon is a humongous factor in that. Whether you like it or not, whether you like him or not, I myself have said I'm not a big fan of the guy. But that doesn't change the fact that they need him to perform. So those are the two main guys I'm keeping an eye on to really perform and not disappoint me more than they already have a lot of the times in the past. Might not even be the biggest fans of them. Maybe they've annoyed me with their lack of production when I know they could do better because I've factually seen in the past that they could do better, in fact. But that's really my perspective. That's how everybody's rounding out spring training. Those are the things I'm expecting to see. I'm expecting the rotation as of right now, like I've said, to be Fried, Rodon, or I guess Rodon first since he's starting opening day. But as far as overall, just basic talent, personally, it's Fried, Rodon. Then after that probably comes Schmidt once he's ready to go. He's probably going to be reactivated very shortly after the season begins. Then, I guess after that, you're going to get Stroman and Carrasco for now. And if you see him at all, depending on what they officially decide with him, Will Warren, maybe at some point. But those are the starting pitching options as of right now. That's the hole that they've put into. That's the situation they found themselves in as spring training gets ready to end. So that's how I expect the rotation to look. As far as the lineup, I will hold on that for just one question now that the spring training wrap-up is complete, more or less. Hit on some of my talking points. Basically, the culmination of said talking points. Spent a lot of time talking about the hitters and how they've done. They're obviously a big part of it, and what I tend to care about more, even with the starting rotation and the peril that it's in. But the Yankees have to hit. And we've seen them struggle with that in a lot of key moments on big, big stages. So that's especially what I tend to focus on. And a lot of the news that I gave before, whether it be transactional or what have you, and a lot of the performances here by the end of spring training by a lot of said hitters, I have also put together what I officially expect the opening day lineup to be. And that also happens to be the social media question, which is why I saved the lineup discussion for last, because that is what the social media segment is based around. So like I said before, because this was posted in weird fashion and Yapping Yankees is doing something a little weird as it has done a couple of times in the past, recording on Saturday, releasing on Sunday, didn't really give people a lot of time, if at all, to see or respond to it. So that's basically the open-ended question for this week, guys, for what was of the social media segment, with many of the roster moves having already been decided and what you think might still happen going forward. Give me your opening day lineup. So my original lineup that I had given about a week ago, I'll restate what I said before, was Wells, Judge, Bellinger, Goldschmidt, Dominguez, Chisholm, Volpe, Smith, and Peraza. Those bottom two especially are going to be different now. But my updated one, if I had to say, is very similar, but I'm still going to go with Austin Wells leading off. Now, I know how lots of people feel about a catcher leading off. Maybe some people even don't trust Austin Wells personally because of what we saw of him to end the regular season and throughout the entire postseason last year. Despite our liking for him, that must have shaken a lot of people's trust, and I've seen that in some areas throughout the Yankee community. And I know a lot of people in general don't like the thought of a catcher leading off. It's not really something we've seen, ever in Yankee history. They've been talking about that a lot, but my logic here, honestly, guys, is don't change what's working right now. Don't fix what isn't broken. That's one of my favorite expressions of all time. And I have to use it again here because it applies. Even if it is an exhibition, which we've seen for almost a whole month of spring training now, even if it is exhibition, it's working fantastically, as I said before when I gave his numbers once again. And most recently, having that killer 2-homer game again just yesterday. So I don't know, man. This is, I think this is the right move to at least start the season with. You could always shift the lineup around if it doesn't work. You could keep this on a short leash. It's not the end of the world. But to start, I really just wouldn't rock the boat and change what's working very well right now. He says he's comfortable there and really, really likes it. So just don't upset that right now. Don't rock the boat. Don't fix what isn't broken. So that's my logic right now, despite all of the objections by some when it comes to this. And I definitely understand that. I mean, if Wells wasn't doing as good as he's doing, if he was just doing all right or something, then I wouldn't be doing this. But he's doing so well right now and has given such positive feedback for it that I'd be willing to at least try it to start the season. But otherwise, I definitely rather someone like Jazz, who has had a lot of leadoff experience in the past. I'd rather someone like Jazz lead off, or some people were even floating Jason Dominguez leading off, which I don't know. I don't know how much I like that. I feel like he should be in RBI moments. I know he hasn't really proven himself all that much as far as major league games actually yet, but I just like him better in bigger RBI spots. And plus, some people say, oh, but Wells is a catcher. You got to have guys who prioritize getting on base and could steal a lot, and Wells might not be set to steal a lot, but the stealing aspect, that's not going to be done a lot regardless of who's in that leadoff spot in front of Judge, especially if Judge is back to batting second, because they don't like people stealing ahead of him because they could possibly be thrown out, and that takes away an extra RBI opportunity with the big bat of Aaron Judge. So they don't really have a lot of stealing going on in front of him anyway. Maybe sometimes, but most of the time not. Even when someone like Anthony Volpe would get on during his leadoff time, they really wouldn't have him steal as much as they should have. Maybe at times they did, but not as much as they should all the way through. So I wouldn't really use that as that big of an argument, like, oh, he's not going to be able to steal as much as someone like Jazz or Volpe would be able to. Those two wouldn't be set to steal all the way through as much as you might think either, because they don't want to have the possibility of them being thrown out and taking away a potential extra run batted in with Aaron Judge at the plate. So those are a lot of the reasons why I'm open to at least starting the season with Wells at leadoff. Again, if it doesn't work, change it up. Judge, I have batting second. Again, tough for me to do, but if you want to keep the lefty-righty dynamic going for what remains in the lineup, at least as of now, then I'm okay with moving him back up there. He's obviously proven to still be very successful in the 2-hole, so again, despite it being a change, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it could still work out very well. Glad to still have him back in right field, despite the generational mishap in center field in Game 5 of the World Series. He was still a very good center fielder overall. But right field is his primary position, and it's still good to see him back out there. After all, the Judge's chambers are in right field, not in center field. So, him back in right, batting second, and this is ultimately what they will go with since they did announce that Bellinger will be the 3-hitter anyway, so it is what it is. Bellinger batting third, which again, I'm okay with, playing center field. Despite his age and probably thinking they could do a bit better with this, I mean, if Stanton were around, it'd be different. Stanton would be my cleanup, but he's not around, so it just is what it is, and I think it could be worse. I think he's going to have himself a pretty nice season, so I think they could do much worse than this, but I'm going to have Goldschmidt batting cleanup and playing first. Then behind him, I know Jason is a switch hitter, but there are more righties and lefties after all, so I do think we'll be seeing him bat lefty a great deal of the time, but even so, he's switched, so it's whatever. But in the event that he's batting lefty a lot more often, just in the interest of keeping that left-right dynamic going, and just in a big RBI spot, I think it'd be cool to have Jason batting fifth. Some people have him batting lower, saying he needs to prove himself a bit more going forward, and that's fine. I don't necessarily completely disagree with that. I'm open to discussion on this like I am with just about anything, almost anything, unless it's just completely outrageous, like certain subjects. But I'm open to that. But I personally have Jason batting fifth. I have him out in left. I'm giving him about a month and a half to figure it out there. if it is unspeakably horrible and there's just zero sign of improvement, you're going to have to switch him at some point. You have to. Otherwise, if it's actually legitimately costing them games actively in real time, you can't ride with that forever. You just can't. In that case, just make the switch from Cody in center to Cody in left and then move Jason back to center and do your thing that way, since center field is Jason's primary position. I was always a little baffled as to why, and I was open to Jason staying in left, but I always thought that once Bellinger was officially acquired, I always said that before Bellinger, then it was just a given they were going to try Dominguez in left, but I thought that when they officially acquired Bellinger, that they would just put Bellinger out there and put Jason back to center, but that's not what they chose. So since they're going to be sticking with this and they want Jason to learn left field very badly, which I kind of understand, it'd be cool if he could learn that, and he's still very young, could soak in a lot of knowledge and experience right now as he continues to develop. He's unfortunately had to miss a lot of time due to injury, so he could use the time and experience. But I would give him about a month and a half or so. And if it's at least serviceable, I would allow it to continue. But if it is god-awful and actively costing them games constantly, they're going to have to make the switch. For now, Jason Dominguez, 5th in left field. 6th, Jazz at 2nd. 7th and 8th, I had a bit of a tough time with. If you want to keep the righty-lefty, just that dynamic going flip-flop like that, with Rice being the DH as opposed to Smith from my original lineup, you would put Rice 8th and Volpe 7th, at least with my lineup. I did see some lineups with Rice batting even higher, like 5th or 6th, and whatever, that's up to other people. But with the lineup that I have, I think Jazz should be higher up than the both of them, because Rice still has some experience to accumulate and some things to prove, and Volpe has quite a bit to prove, particularly at the plate. So it's tough here, but if you want to keep the right-left flip-flop going, then after Jazz, you would put Volpe as a righty, because Jazz is a lefty, and you'd have him at short. But if you don't care about that, and I do think it'd be interesting to have Rice ahead of Volpe, but in this case, I think I'm going to actually do lefty-lefty, one after the other. I'm going to put Rice ahead of Volpe. So he'll bat 7th as DH as of right now. And then 8th will be Volpe as the righty after 2 lefties in a row. He'll be at short. And then Cabrera would round it out at 9th, playing third base. Now, some people might also argue that they would put Volpe 7th in the interest of right-left, because in the event, with my lineup at least, that Dominguez bats 5th and he's batting lefty, if you have Rice batting 7th, you would actually have 3 lefties in a row. So just because of that, you would want to put Volpe at 7 to break that up. And I guess I understand that. But then again, at least with my lineup, again, you kind of fall into the same trapping if you are to do that, because then after that, you have Rice 8th, Cabrera 9th, and if Cabrera is batting lefty, because Oswaldo's a switch too, as we know, but if he is batting lefty, then you have Wells leading off, and there you go, 3 lefties in a row there too. So it's kind of tough. The Yankees actually have more lefties in a lot of areas than righties, which is a problem that was completely the opposite just a few years ago. It was a massive issue with them just a few years back that they had almost no lefties at all, and they've really corrected that problem. They got a lot of lefties now. But just a few things to consider with the lineup. But my lineup is still Rice 7, Volpe 8, and then Cabrera 9th at third. So that's my opening day lineup. It would be Wells, Judge, Bellinger, Goldschmidt, Dominguez, Jazz, Rice, Volpe, and Cabrera. So, what was your opening day lineup? Again, only a few people got to reply to this. Not much action on this, but nonetheless, we'll just read out their replies, get some thoughts from others. First off, let's start with Rebecca at Peace Now for Life. Rebecca said, I'm so excited for the season to start. I'm not really good at lineup construction, but here's mine. Wells at catcher, Judge and right, Bellinger in center, Jazz at second, batting cleanup. That's interesting. Goldschmidt at first, Rice at DH, Dominguez in left, Volpe at short, and Cabrera at third. So last 2 of our lineups round up pretty well, Rebecca. The only major differences I see is that Dominguez has moved down a couple of slots and Jazz is bumped up to cleanup. I definitely would not have that. I don't think Jazz is a good cleanup hitter. I mean, he has flashes of power at times, but I'd like my cleanup guy to hit at least I don't know, 20 to 25 home runs at the very least. It still has to be a higher RBI spot, and I think you probably have more of an opportunity because I do think that Goldschmidt's going to have a better season than some might think this year. So I do think that Goldschmidt will have a better chance of driving in more runs than Jazz would, and I need that out of the cleanup spot. So I'm going to leave Goldschmidt at cleanup for myself. I'm moving Jazz back down to at least 5 or 6. I just personally would not put him at cleanup. So that's just me personally. Otherwise, there are a lot of elements to our lineup that are the same. 1 through 3 is exactly the same. 4, 5, 6, 7 is just a little bit different. And Rice and Dominguez. Dominguez I have higher. Like I said before, Dominguez is lower in some people's lineups, and Rebecca's an example of that. That's fine. But yeah, otherwise it's 5 out of the 9 slots are exactly the same. And there are just some very minor differences otherwise in the middle there. But otherwise, I wouldn't hate Rice batting 6th. I could understand that. The only real big red flag to me here is just having Jazz at cleanup. I wouldn't want that. Otherwise, I'd be down to at least discuss the rest that are different at least. Otherwise, good stuff for Becca. And yeah, I cannot believe the season is that close. I agree. At Fundamentals NYY says, Dominguez in left field leading off. I do see some people having him lead off. I don't hate it, but I wouldn't do that myself. I want him in more RBI situations, personally. Judge batting second and right. Bellinger batting third and center. Goldschmidt batting cleanup at first. So 2, 3, and 4 are the same for both of us, my guy. Batting fifth at second base is Jazz. Okay. So just a 1 slot difference between us. Batting sixth at catcher is Wells. Okay, so there's one of the people who wouldn't want Wells leading off. That's fine. Rice batting 7th at DH. That's what I have. And then Cabrera batting 8th at third. And Volpe batting 9th at short. So just those two reversed in comparison with my lineup. But I wouldn't hate that either. Rice, Cabrera, and Volpe as opposed to Volpe and Cabrera. But I don't hate that lineup. I don't hate it. I might move Wells behind Goldschmidt. Otherwise, I'd be able to live with that. Not too big of a fan of Dominguez leading off, but I could live with that. Then we have my good buddy Spencer at Musician DMD. My friend Spence. Hope you're doing well, buddy. He says Wells, Judge, Bellinger, Goldschmidt, Dominguez, Jazz, Rice, Cabrera, Volpe. That's nearly the same exact damn thing as me. I think actually the only difference that you and I have is that Volpe and Cabrera are reversed, and I don't really mind that at all. Volpe batting 9th is not the worst thing. But, yeah, otherwise we're nearly identical. So, definitely understand that. And he also went on to say, I don't just look at the Yankees, but our competition. Despite the setbacks, our team measures up very well, even ahead of the other AL teams. Prediction, 90 wins, AL East champs. Yeah, because of the injuries and setbacks and everything, that definitely has hurt things at least a bit, objectively, whether we like it or not. So that has made things a little hairy as far as a potential division title again for what would be the second year in a row. But I don't think it's impossible. I definitely think it's possible they win the AL East again. But 90 wins, winning the AL East with that. That's a pretty damn weak division, my guy. I think it's very possible that we could see that, but that's a weak-ass division. If 90 wins can get you to the division title, wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't expect much out of the AL East again this year. Last year I expected more out of it than what we got, but this year I'm not expecting much. Because I think the Red Sox, I think the Red Sox will be better than last year, but they still have a lot of shortcomings. The Blue Jays, they just regularly underwhelm. I don't see them doing anything spectacular. I don't think the Rays will be doing anything crazy, but they've surprised a lot of people a lot of the time, but I'm not sure that'll happen this time around. They don't even have their own ballpark to play in. So I just think it's going to be a very weird year for the Rays. I don't really see them doing much. And the Orioles, they still have a couple of heavy hitters, but they had a brutal offseason, man. Losing Burns, Santander. they took another step down as far as I'm concerned from where they were a couple of years ago. So, yeah, it could be a pretty underwhelming AL East once again. We'll see. But although the Yankees have definitely suffered some heavy setbacks, I definitely don't think it's impossible if they win the division. It's very possible. But let's move on to our last usual two, as always, because that's just about it, honestly. The few people who replied, and just very weird week. So we'll bounce back with a much bigger social media segment next week, I imagine. But for now, let's finish off with, first off, my girlfriend, at Vic Salimo, and she says, after telling me your lineup earlier, I agree with yours. Volpe definitely needs to be towards the bottom. He has a lot to prove. Yeah, he does. I mean, I know that you probably also wouldn't mind seeing him ninth, and I wouldn't either, like I said. So, I don't know. We'll see. I definitely agree that he has a lot to prove as well. I completely agree. I need to see some significant leaps forward with the bat. And lastly, we have my mom at Julia Gina Scudero, and my mom says, "Hi Mike, good hearing you back. Since I'm not particularly great at putting lineups together, I must say I do like yours. Hoping the bats start hitting and keep hitting. Please, Judge, get with it. Miss you, man. Let's go opening day, and let's go Yankees." Yeah, amen to all that. Definitely want the bats to freaking hit, like they have not done in many big moments. But, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about Judge. Spring training for someone like Judge, someone who's a definite to make the roster and you know they're going to be great, at least during the regular season, it's really not that big of a deal. So the fact that he really has done nothing this spring outside of the awesome homer that we saw today, it doesn't mean a damn thing to me. Just like the scores don't matter. I don't even recap the scores in spring training anymore. I could not care less. So, I mean, especially when the scores are majorly dictated by a lot of the minor leaguers who we know we're not going to see a second of in 2025 or any of the given seasons beforehand. But I like to mention the moments that the guys we do know we're going to see have and how they're doing. But otherwise, it really is inconsequential. Doesn't mean much to me at all. But another agreement with my lineup, more or less. That's cool. And actually, before I wrap this up, there was a bit of a talking point before that I wanted to mention, but it's actually good timing for this now because it actually just happened today anyway. But amidst the Yankees news that was revealed today, some updates about things that might happen once the regular season begins. Did anybody actually see that report saying that Boone might actually consider leading off Paul Goldschmidt on days where they face a lefty? I mean, listen, we all know that Boone has the tendency to get weird plenty. He gets really, really weird with positioning and lineup and everything. Load management crap, we all know about it. But that is definitely very, very interesting. Having Paul Goldschmidt lead off at any capacity. I mean, I know he's a righty against a lefty, so it could create a big start right at the top of the lineup, but Goldschmidt at leadoff, bro? I don't know. It's a little weird for me. And maybe it'll work out if he does it just a couple of times. Who knows? He did it today. And Goldschmidt got an RBI at the very least, despite going 0 for 2. But I don't know, man. We'll see. It's going to get weird at times like it always does, especially when the Yankees have a lot of injuries. It gets weird. So we have a whole season ahead of us to talk about all of this. And the cool thing is that said season will have begun by the time we yap again next Sunday, which is freaking awesome and beyond surreal that we are already here. But with this weekend coming to a close, so too does episode 252 today, my friends. Thank you so much for listening, as always. Remember to follow me on all social medias if you have not already. My Facebook fan page is Mike Scudero NY. My Twitter or X is at Mike Scudero. Primarily stay glued there if you're ever looking for up-to-the-minute updates. I'm most active on there. But again, my Twitter or X is at Mike Scudero. My Instagram is Mike Scuds97. Also fairly active on that too, especially on my stories. But Mike Scuds97 for my Instagram. Subscribe to Yapping Yankees on all 4 of the platforms it is available on. It's available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment wherever you may be listening to spread the love and spread the word about the show. And if you have the time, if you've missed any past Yapping Yankees episodes and you'd like to still listen to them, well, episodes 1, going all the way back to the beginning, all the way back in May or June of 2019, all the way up to episode 252 today, episodes 1 all the way up to this one, they're all available on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. But if you're a YouTube listener, you prefer to listen on YouTube, I can very much be like that sometimes, so I would certainly understand. Just be aware that I didn't start uploading on YouTube until episode 34, so episodes 34 up to today's episode could all be found on there. But otherwise, once again, I thank you 3,000 for listening to me yap today. As always, my good friends, I have been your host, Mike Scudero, and we shall yap again next Sunday, back to weekly, at least as of now, temporarily. We'll see what goes on for the month of April. But for now, we shall yap again next Sunday, March 30th, when I come at you with episode 253 of Yapping Yankees. But until then, guys, the usuals. Doesn't make them any less important, though. Hang in there. Be patient. Please stay safe. Look out for your loved ones. Go ahead and kick life's ass this week once again. And let us all just enjoy these last couple of exhibition games before being thrown into the regular season on Thursday, the 27th. I cannot friggin' wait. Thursday, the 27th at Yankee Stadium. Yankees are opening up against the Brewers at 3:05 p.m. Eastern. It'll be Carlos Rodon against Freddie Peralta. Make sure you're watching that if you can. Friday, they're off. Saturday, the 29th, it'll be against the Brewers once again at 1:05 p.m. at the stadium. We'll actually be seeing Nestor start that day for the Brewers. That'll be interesting at Yankee Stadium. And then Sunday, they'll be rounding out the 3-game opening weekend set with a 1:35 p.m. Eastern game for when we yap again. I cannot freaking wait, guys. Let's enjoy the ride up until then and see what final decisions they make otherwise leading up to that with the couple of things they still have yet to decide. But until then, my friends, in this final home stretch leading up to opening day, take care and let's go Yanks.